Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining this impromptu moment with Aftershock the Movement. I want to thank my friends for jumping on with me as well for this conversation. Really quickly, we're going to have everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into the conversation today. We'll start with Trinisha.
Hello, I'm Trinisha Marks. I am an evangelist of New Beginnings Ministries, and that's pretty much who I am.
We're gonna go. All right. So my name is Erica Nicole. I'm an event strategist, but I'm just a simple servant. I serve creatives.
Event strategist. I like that.
My name is
Bishop.
Dominique Campbell. Yeah, no. I'm out of Oakland, California. I currently serve as a minister at Breaking Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and also am a musician as well. So that's what
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm Trinity Payton. I'm the founder of Aftershock the Movement and the executive pastor of Blessed Faith Ministries. As Erica said, I'm just a servant, here to serve wherever I can, is what we do. So just really quickly, this is an impromptu session. I was having a conversation this morning with a friend of mine, and it kind of sparked into something deeper for me. So I don't know where it's going to go from here, but we were talking about, actually, he was showing me his new tattoo, and we started to get into wounds and different things like that. And so it sparked into the conversation that we're going to have today, talking about wounds and wound care from a spiritual perspective. I was trying to get a friend of mine who is a wound care nurse on for this conversation with us on today. But just to start the conversation off, I wanted to make sure that we understood what a wound is. So a wound is a type of injury which happens relatively quick, in which skin is torn, cut, or punctured. An open wound, or where blunt force trauma causes a contusion, which is a closed wound. So you'll have a wound, but it's closed. In pathology, it specifically refers to a sharp injury which damages the epidermis of the skin. And so I looked at a few different types of wounds, open wounds that we have. Of course, we have an abrasion. An abrasion occurs when your skin rubs or scrapes against a rough or hard surface. So it scrapes, but it doesn't tear. And then you have the laceration, which is a deep cut or tearing of the skin. From there, you have a puncture, which is a small hole caused by a long pointy object, such as a nail or needle. And then lastly, we have an avulsion, which a skin avulsion is a wound that happens when skin is torn from your body during an accident or other injury. The torn skin may be lost or too damaged to be repaired, and it must be removed. A wound of this type cannot be stitched or closed because there's tissue missing.
You're on mute.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And so, so those were the different types of wounds that we had. And so from there, I was looking at it from a spiritual perspective. And when I was looking at the different types of wounds, I was thinking about how church is, and how we all have, how from a ministry standpoint, or from a believer standpoint, we have so many different types of wounds that we deal with. I was thinking just in general from ministry. I was thinking from the place of, I was thinking also from the place of relationship. We have so many different types of wounds that we have, that we're encountering. And so what I was thinking about is funny how we'll move on into different situations or different friendships, different relationships. And so what we have is we have the scar that's there that we've been treating, but we feel like because now we have a scar, it's okay to move on. Or we feel like, we have this scar and it's, everything is okay. And we don't realize that a scar is just, or I'm sorry, not a scar, a scab. So a scab is just the beginning stages of the healing process. From a scab, anything could happen. That scab tears, and what happens? That wound now opens back up and has to begin the healing process all over again. So, how often us on the live have encountered where we've thought that we were healed, moved on, and then realized from an incident that happens, it reminds us, oh, I'm not healed. And so then it shocks us and it puts us back into a place that we have to begin the healing process all over again from something that we thought we were healed from. You're muted, Erica. Sorry.
I was like, who's gonna go first?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't care where we start.
You go, T. Y'all got it. No, I think that it's I think that over and over in life, like we find ourselves, and we see this in ministry, we see this in relationship, we see this in interpersonal relationship as well as romantic relationship. We think that, okay, so I dealt with that. This one doesn't look anything like that. But then we within ourselves, we don't know the places that trigger those refreshing or the scab to be wiped off, right?
Right.
So can you hear me? Okay, because it's like your screen is froze. So I looked up wound care to Trinity, and it said that immediately you should wash and disinfect the wound. You should remove all the dirt and debris, and then use pressure and elevate it. So if we immediately wash and disinfect, that means that how do we wash in the spiritual context? And I'm not trying to be super deep or spiritual, but when we disinfect or wash it, it's like we do that with the word. So a lot of times we think that we're ready because we've like, okay, I'm over that. I don't see the residue of that anymore. And then we jump back into something, whether it's ministry, whether it's church, whether it's whatever. And then you're like, wait, hold on. Maybe I'm not, because that person said this to me and they didn't mean that. But I'm dealing with them from the place of that previous wound. And now my scab is bleeding again. So that's my 2 cents right there.
Right. And one thing that I had to learn about the healing process is depending on the type of wound I have, depends on the type of time that it takes to heal. Number one, let's deal with it. My healing process may be different than yours. And my healing process may be different than yours because let's talk about our medical conditions, just from a natural perspective. If you're diabetic, your healing time is slower than the average person. Diabetics have to be careful of being cut. Why? Because a diabetic doesn't heal as quick as just the average person every day. And so there are different variations of healing processes. Well, that's the same thing from a spiritual place. Our healing time isn't going to be the same. We all don't heal and jump up and we're all walking around okay tomorrow.
So it's not, everybody's not. So remember Luke 4:38. Jesus goes to Simon's house and he heals Simon's mother-in-law. She had a fever and
Yeah.
immediately jumped up and she began to serve. That's not everybody's story. Everybody doesn't have that immediately. Everybody doesn't have that, okay, I'm healed, let me go and get active again, or let me go and be friends with this person again, or let me go and try this. It's not, that's not everybody doesn't have it immediately. For some,
No.
they may.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to what you're saying.
Right. Go ahead.
And then also, it depends on, like, I know, like, for me, I had a cesarean with my daughter when I had her, and it's like she's 15 now, but there are certain places where I touch it's numb. But unless I'm not doing something, like it looks like it's healed, on the surface looks like it's healed, there's no cut, you can't see it, but underneath the surface there's still nerves and stuff that need to be back together again, that are not back together again. And I think that's what happens in the body of Christ, is that it comes, it looks like it is, I'm functional where I'm at, but until I touch that particular place, I don't even know that there is a numbness there. I don't even know there is an issue there. And so there's transformation. So what you see is people get healed, they start working, they do a whole bunch of busy stuff, and they do a whole bunch of stuff. And then what happens is that one area gets touched years later, and then they have a fallout because it was never really dealt with. It was never. So I did the cleaning. I kept it clean. I did all the stuff that was necessary in order for it to heal. But some things only time will heal. Experiences, going through it will heal. Because those nerves, you can't see that. So even us being leaders, we look at stuff and it's like we see that person and they're functioning and we think they're perfectly fine. But they're basically living and walking wounds. But we don't realize because it looks like it's already healed.
Or they've masked it so well.
Come on.
They've masked it. So they put Band-Aid over it. And so now when we rip the Band-Aid again, then now they're dealing with a wound that's almost as bad as the first time it was ever injured or punctured. Because now they're Band-Aids. We mask it. We mask it with busy work. We mask it with confidence, seeming confidence. We mask it. And
Right.
it's never healed. We just cover it up.
And the fact that I think, what did you say, Tranisha? You said they're living and walking wounds.
Yes.
They're
Living and
living.
walking.
We become
They
living
don't
and
look like.
walking wounds because we don't allow ourselves. And sometimes I honestly believe this. I believe that the Lord allows us because I just believe that there are areas that in our lives where we just need to reach a certain level of perfection. I think love is one of those places that we're constantly striving, and so I think sometimes we continue to bump certain areas that we have hit, and we've experienced a wound in that area, and we keep bumping that area, and we keep hitting it. I think sometimes that's a constant reminder that we need to work on that area. It's not always a bad thing to have to work on an area. I think sometimes we keep hitting that same area because maybe that's the nerve that keeps hitting that reminds us, hey, you need to heal there. You need to get over that. And I think that we don't allow ourselves to get to the place of total healing. It's not that you can't. I think that we don't allow ourselves to, and then we put ourselves in situations where we think we are, and you really aren't.
But there's some people
So,
that don't want to be healed. If we could just be candid, this is impromptu because the place of non-healing brings the attention. The place of non-healing brings you understand, like it brings them some kind of needed, because there's some old wounds now that are masked by new wounds, and they treat the old wounds by the attention of the new wound.
the
Like they
victim.
it's this vicious cycle of I don't want to be healed, because healing is wholeness. And so now
Mm-hmm.
if I'm whole, who's going to pay attention to me? If I'm whole, I
Yeah.
don't know how to function in wholeness. So what does that look like?
Which is
And
why Jesus told them, take up thy bed and walk. Because if it were us, we would lay back down on the mat and keep going in the same condition. Some people would never remove the bed and they would never walk because it's good to just be in a certain place where I'm constantly getting the
and it's
necessary
comfortable,
attention and
like
it's
the man gave
comfortable.
it's comfortable. It's comfortable not to, because healing takes work. And so, like, if you look at wound care and you look at, like, okay, so I gotta wash and disinfect it. I gotta apply pressure and elevate it. People don't want to deal with pressure. I
Hmm.
gotta elevate it. Then I gotta, and then I gotta make sure that, because sometimes when you leave it uncovered for too long, it'll dry it out. So how many
Hmm.
of us are dried out because we left our stuff uncovered for too long? So it's like you can't, man, listen, you can't It's comfortable. It's comfortable to be in a place for some people where they're needing healing because they don't want to
Yeah.
do the work.
And I think that's the important thing. We don't want to do the work. And so what happens is, what I've learned is, just over time of being in church and over time of being in friendships, what I've learned is that if I become disgruntled with somebody, I want everybody around me to be disgruntled. I want everybody around me to be unhappy. And so oftentimes I've created this, I have this wound, and it's not necessarily something that Tranisha did to me, but it's the residuals of what has happened over a course of time. And so now I'm finding myself along the way continuing to fall into this cycle where at what point does that become an issue on my part and not everybody else's? At what point can I say I'm not allowing myself to heal because I'm jumping and I'm not taking time to just sit down and allowing myself to properly heal, sterilize, disinfect, do the necessary, in other words, get in the word, find yourself there, find yourself in the scripture. Not when we read the Bible, I can see everybody else, but where you actually see you for who you really are. And then you see yourself in the text, and then you start doing the work that you see. So when do we come to the point where we allow ourselves to sit down and take a really good self-evaluation? Because it's at the hospital that you determine, how bad is this wound? Some wounds don't have to go to the hospital. Paper cuts, you're not going to the hospital. It hurts, but it's not hospital worthy. You do whatever you do at home and you keep on going. It's going to heal, and over time, and you'll be okay. But then you have those that are necessary. It depends on the necessity of it. You get a laceration, depends on how deep that cut is. Now you've got to determine at the hospital, is stitches necessary? Are staples necessary? What are we doing? Did you totally lose skin and nerves and all of that to the point where this is now something deeper than what it is? And so sometimes I think we make it bigger than what it is, because at the stage where it can heal on its own, we don't allow it to heal on its own because we're continuing to do our norm, and we're not sitting down to say, hey, evaluate, there's a problem, let's deal with it.
Well, sometimes you can have a heal and not really, have a wound and not really know how bad it is. So, you can be doing something and thinking that, oh, okay, I'm better, I'm okay. You ever cut yourself? And cut yourself and it continued to bleed, and it continued to bleed and continue to bleed. And then there's also times where you can get cut and it leaves a scar, where you have a scar. And sometimes people, and this is just the opposite side of it, sometimes you may have the healing and you may actually be healed, but the scar is still there. So it's like people are dealing with you based off of your scars and not understanding that the healing has actually happened. So they're still putting me back to that place because they see the scar. And the reason why I say that is years ago, I was cleaning the church. And this is kind of like a different, it was a wound, but it was a different type of wound. I end up breaking my ankle in the process of doing that. And I'm on the phone with my mom cleaning the church and made a wrong step. And I clearly heard it pop. But God told me, he said, I need you to get up. He said, do you believe I can reset it? I said, yeah, I do. But he said, I need you to get up. And when I got up, I felt the pain. And I'm going somewhere. So I got up and I felt the pain, right? And so I immediately wanted to sit back down because, I'm not a small little girl. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of weight to put on that. It was broken. Okay. Come on.
Right.
Okay. So I get up, and as I'm walking, it didn't immediately go back into place. So when I tell you I was in pain, like my mom was like, what are you doing? Like, you're crazy. Like, what's the problem? Like, you need to go to the hospital. Like, I'm on the way to the church. Like, come on. And I'm like, no, but the Lord told me he could heal it. And he told me that he would put it back in place. And so by the time I got through walking around the church, God healed it and put it back in place, right? But I had this big old bruise that was on the side of my ankle. And that bruise was there for a long time. But the thing is that God set it back into place. It was, but so often we don't want to feel the pain. See, I didn't want to feel the pain that was necessary. Pain is designed to help you because it's a mechanism for the body in order to keep you from injuring it worse. So it was like I didn't want to feel the pain that it was necessary for my healing. I didn't want to feel that. Like I wanted to get up and it already be reset and then me act like it never happened. But it wasn't going to act like it never happened. I had to teach Bible study that night. And it was like you could see the blue, because you know I'm light skinned, so you know everything gonna show. So the bruise was like all up my leg, and they were like, "What happened to your leg?" They kept bringing attention back to my leg. What happened to your leg? What happened to your leg? What happened to your leg? Okay, but you're still looking at my scar, but you're not understanding that God has already reset the bone. Everything is fine, but I'm functioning with it. But I had to go through the pain necessary, and I had to walk. I had to put some weight that was on there in order to get to where I needed to be. So yeah.
That's the
Go
word.
ahead, Erica. Go ahead,
Saying,
Erica.
the word. That's the word. Or the flip side of that is we often want to hide our wounds. We want to act like it never happened. We want to act like, and that's the place where ministry takes place. When you can show them like, listen, I was cut in that place too. And I bled in that place too. But I did the work. I gave and I think a lot of times, and I hate to listen, Trinity, you asked me to come on here, so I'm just gonna be myself. So a lot of times in churches, we get we get the what, like we get the, oh, you need to do this, and this, and we don't get the how. And the how is the wound treatment. The how is where we learn that we cover, or whether we disinfect or we leave it, when to elevate it, when to apply pressure. And I think that the biggest part in all of this becomes accountability, because if we have some if I have a good nurse, she's going to tell me when it's time to uncover my wound. She's going to tell me when it's time to apply the pressure. She's going to tell me when it's time to elevate. A good nurse is going to let me know, like, wait, hold on. I got to apply sterile. When you do rewrap this, it's going to need sterile bandage. A sterile bandage is clean. So we can't even let the dirty stuff that caused the wound, we can't allow that back to infant. Why did we remove the debris if we're just going to wrap it back up with the dirty bandage again?
And the thing that you hit is, the thing is, there's a good nurse that does it. The thing about the good nurse is she specializes in that. She's a wound care nurse who specializes in wounds. So why are we allowing ourselves to sometimes connect to people who are in a worse off place than we are? So they're trying to be a nurse to us, and they can't even nurse themselves. And so we get to the place where we're allowing people who don't specialize in that to try to assist us in areas that they themselves haven't even accomplished themselves. And so the thing that I'm learning is, the necessary thing is to go back to what Trinisha says. It's the work. Are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to apply the pressure? Are you willing to be in pain? Are you willing to be discomforted? Are you willing to be accountable? Are you willing to go through the process of what it's going to take to properly heal so that you can be good for every area of your life and not just one specific area? One thing that I love, shout out to Dr. Matthew Stevenson, who started Leader School. And in Leader School, one of the first weeks of our lesson, it was to deal with you. This first round is dealing with your own self. It's finding out who you are. What area of ministry do you really belong in? And the way that you find that out is you actually have to go through the process of finding out, what did you overcome? Okay, so at 10 or 11 years old, somewhere around there, no, a little younger, 8 or 9, I was molested. I was molested for years by, my babysitter's son. My mom had to get a babysitter. We were living in Vegas. Parents got to work, blah, 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 blah. Someone had called CPS on my mom because we were being left at home. But my mom was a young country woman. We had just moved to the city. So they were trying to make things work. So we were left at home. Well, it wasn't the intent to leave us at home because she didn't, because she wanted to, but we didn't have the necessity to get we weren't in the place or didn't know anybody. We didn't have the resources that we can go to someone's house. So from that, she met somebody at work who lived right across the street. We ended up going to this, lady's house. My mom was good friends with her. Her son was about 15, 16. And from that age until, I was about 11, I was molested. Well, that took healing to get over. And it doesn't come overnight. It's something that, and I didn't realize the trauma that it had caused until I had told someone that I told a young lady that I was dating about it. I had never even told my mom that. I just, how there are certain things that you just remember as you get older. Well, I'm in ministry, had moved on, did all of that. And I confided that into a young lady I was dating. And from there, she told my mom, which now this has triggered a different area now, because you got to think, so now this lady has to deal with something that happened 15, 17, something like that years ago, but now she has to face the trauma of what I experienced as a kid. And so now she's got to go through and process this. Well, how did I allow this to happen? And how didn't I see this? And so you can only imagine the work that she had to do in order to get to the place to say, I forgive myself and this and that and blah, blah, all the stuff that this individual had to go through. And so I think I believe that that is a great part of my ministry, but how do you get there to the point where you allow yourself to heal, to even have that conversation? Because there's so many people who were broke in certain places, who are trying to minister in certain areas that they have been healed from, but they don't want to talk about because they're afraid of what people may say about them.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I've been having technical issues over here. I'm trying to get it together, y'all. But we got it all together. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so first of all, I'm honored to be a part of this Aftershock the Movement conversation with Bishop Payton here, and Evangelist Marks, and Mother event strategist Erica Nicole. And so for me, when you initially asked me to be a part of the conversation, the first thing that prompted in my spirit was that are we okay with the process of understanding why Jesus was in his new form, in his resurrected state, with the hose still in his hand? Oftentimes when we talk about healing, we misdiagnose healing as something that needs to be closed in order for you to still function. Jesus, when he was resurrected, basically gave us a picture to understand that he was still able to give his doubters room to inspect what he did in his completion, right? But he still had the wounds available and open for them to see. And I think a lot of times in church, we often look at healing from the lens of closure, when you can still leave your hands open and still grab a hold to whatever you're trying to get in your hand. And so he and so when you initially talked to me, the first thing I heard, like, it was almost like God just like, here it is. Like, because when we're talking about healing and the process of healing, as human beings, we often hide our holes. And we often hide the things that would allow us to look human, right? We often hide the things that make us look imperfect, that we look like we make mistakes. A lot of people are not willing to be honest and transparent with other individuals about their stories, because people feel like their words that they give in private are weaponized against them in public settings. And so for me, when we're talking about healing and we're using Jesus as the model, he was okay with showing his holes, because he knew that his holes came from his obedience, because he knew that the things that he was processing and the things that he went through, and all the things that them whipping him with the cat o' nine tails, them hanging him on the cross, them putting the nails in his hands, while for others it would be uncomfortable, he was like, this is all a part of the process for me to get the victory anyway. And so what we have to understand is the holes that we have in our hands that remain even after we come into the power of the resurrection that we all possess as believers. We have to be okay with these holes being in our hands. I own my holes with no problem. I own my holes with no issue, because I understand that it's the holes in me that give other people room to fit into the picture of God at the end of the day. And so you're going to have doubting Thomases, right? You're going to have all these individuals. We have a generation of doubters. We have a generation of people who emulate and they indoctrinate culture that literally pushes people down. We have a whole culture that's based on mockery, right? So we do memes based on the principle of mockery. But when you leave your holes available, you can put the meme up because I gave you the information to put up about me anyway. I ain't tripping. I ain't mad. I'm laughing with you about the fact that y'all laughing at me because what I've given you the ammunition now to further whatever agenda you got. Now you don't have the power. And I think it's a very, very powerful thing, even when we deal with the aspect of Jesus saying, I laid down my own life. Right. I was transparent in a moment. Like you thought that you put me on the cross and you thought that you did all these things to me. But the reality was I did this intentionally. I had purpose in what I said. I had purpose in what I did. I had purpose in the way in which I handled certain dynamics in certain situations. So when they came to me being healed on the other side, and now I have to be intentional again, what's the greatest form of me being intentional? I'm gonna leave the holes here. And I'm gonna give you room to put your finger in and make, because this is the only way you're gonna identify me in my resurrected state. It's got to be something that is still an identifier when I'm in my resurrected state. Even if you go into the narrative of Joseph, they say that they don't recognize him based on his appearance. Because the last time they saw him was 13 years prior. The last time they saw him, he was in a pit. The last time they knew nothing about Potiphar's house. They knew nothing about him being in jail. They only saw him in his resurrected state. And so when you see him in his resurrected state, you don't even recognize him. You don't even know what he don't look like. He don't look like he came from where you came from. He got money now. He look good. You can't hate on him now. Now, matter of fact, the same person you threw in the pit is now the person you asking for a handout from, and he's having to pull you out of where you were, right? Just because he was obedient to God. So we have to get out of this cultural mindset that we got to hide everything as Black people, number one, right? What stay in his house, what goes on in his house, stay in his house. We have to be humble enough to come into the full knowledge of we got these holes, and let people inspect their holes. Like, I ain't perfect. I didn't experience all kind of, crazy stuff, especially when it came to ministry. If a lot of people in our generation talking about they don't want to go to church because they hurt. And I'm like, if that was going to be my excuse, I would have stopped 12 years ago. I for sure wouldn't be here right now. So you talking to the wrong individual if you're going to come to me talking about church hurt and not wanting to come. Because the only reason I kept going was because I had to learn how to endure the pain and take the hit and keep going. But yeah, that's just what I heard in my spirit when you asked this question. That's something that I feel like we have to address. It's okay to have holes. Jesus left those holes there for a reason, and it was connected directly to healing, right? Because healing is the children's bread, right? We heal through the hands, right? But you're healing through hands with holes in them. It makes no natural logical sense that I can bring wholeness to you with holes still in my hand. It's weird. Like, how do you have wholeness with holes? They don't go together at all. But that's how God works. And that's what I believe he left as an identifier, like he was talking about. We have to leave something or Erica said, I believe, that we have to leave something, or we have to be identified by something where people can know that we had these wounds too. So wow. Yeah, that's what I gotta say. I'm gonna put myself
what I heard you. Go ahead, Trinita.
You're moving from a physical state to a spiritual state. You're moving from a physical state to a spiritual state. So those holes were there, but they were already. He had already did the work. He was already resurrected. He was already walking around. He was already doing it. And so what happens is we try to fight it in the physical state. There has to be a spiritual transformation of your holes. For now, your holes to now have meaning in the kingdom of God. Right. Because now, yes, I might be divorced, but it doesn't stop me from doing what God has. Yes, I might have had some issues with lying in the past, and I may have been known as this, but God changed my name. You see what I'm saying? But what happens is when we don't move them holes from the physical state. So yes, he had those holes. They were very real, but they were tangible. You could put your hand in it. But the fact of the matter is he had moved from a physical to a spiritual state, if that makes, but he still had not ascended yet. But there was work to do before he got to his next place.
Yeah. And what I love about this is that what you said was he came, but he came with a mission to do something. So everything that caused the holes was in the process of him doing the will of God. The problem is, I think many of us are still in a broken place because most of our holes are because of us. most of the things that have happened is because we caused it. And so that's when you fall into the place of a victim. That's when you fall into the place of I'm broken and I can't and I this and I that and so did this to me. And that's when you fall into place of trying to tear churches up, trying to destroy people's characters, trying to mess up people's lives because you're miserable because you caused it. And now you want to blame everybody else for what you did. But when you are in God's will, it don't matter how many things come upon me or it don't matter how much danger I fall into. I understand that in the lion's den, he'll still allow the lion to lay down and behave and allow me to take my nap and be okay. But even if a snake bites me and hold on to me, I have the wound to show, or I have the scar to show that I've been bitten, but there's no venom to kill me there. And so I think that's the place that we have to get to, is that even though it happened, what was the reason that it happened? Was this God's will, or was it because God told you no and you wanted to do it yourself? Now, granted, I believe that God gives grace and that you'll heal and that you'll get over it and that it will turn into a testimony. But we've got to understand the place of where we are so that we understand sometimes why you became bitter and why you just allowed yourself to heal. Because when you are in the will of the Lord, I just believe that there are some things that you really would have hated people over, but you understand that it's God's will that it happened. And so I can't hate you. Because in order for me to get to the destiny of where I needed to go, I needed to encounter this. It was good for me that I had been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. I might learn the things of the Lord. I might fall into the place. Some things happened so that I could be pushed to the place of prayer. Some things happened so that I could fast. Because if things don't happen, I'll never fast. I'll never spend time with God. I'll never be pushed to the place where I need to be because everything is normal. It takes me sometimes to have a hit or two, to have a contusion, to have a skin tear, to have a laceration so that I can get down and pray. So that I do have that reminder that, hey, you ain't all together. And so while you're getting ready to judge somebody else, let me put my hand in there. Let me rip this scab off of here. Let me remind you of how human you really are, because you ain't arrived. So while you about to gossip, let me tear this off so that you'll know that grace is available for everybody else too.
Doc, you got to watch your tongue on here, Doc. You know, it ain't Sunday morning, Doc, but you know, we'll flip a computer and do a drop kick on something. Listen, you listen, Doc.
No, sir, you doing it today.
Yes, Lord. Listen. No, and so I also want to also talk about this too. When you study the holes of Jesus on the cross, in the picture of the cross, they're not just in his hands. They're in his feet. They're in his side. They're on his head because he got a crown of thorns on his head. Once you take that crown of thorns out of his head, now there are holes in his head. Then they rip the flesh off of his back. Now he has holes in his back. So he has holes.
Hold on, let's pause right there. Hold on, before you go, let's pause. So he has abrasions. He has lacerations because he has a laceration in his side. He has the hole in his side. He has the wounds, which are avulsions on his back, because those are when they hit him, those were the things that tore the skin, messed up the nerve, so that tissue couldn't even be repaired. I'm sorry, keep going.
No, it's good. So the picture is I need to show you the level of suffering so you can understand why my grace is sufficient, right? And so grace is the number 5. Okay, there are 5 points of contact, right, that have to be nailed to the cross, or that they basically have to hang him or nail him. So the hole in his side, right, because the hole in his side, right, is the fifth piercing. So you got the 2 hands, you got the 2 feet. The piercing of his head is not technically the piercing that you would consider, because it wasn't done with a rod or with a metal object, right? So now you're looking at the picture of grace, and then to make matters worse, I just told you we're in a culture of mockery. Then you put a crown of thorns on this man's head as the ultimate form of mockery on a cross, and you got him sitting between 2 thieves. Okay, so now who is the thief that you have just crowned God, or you just crowned Jesus as the king thief that has come down here in the earth. What is he coming to steal then? What what are you coming to take away from an empire that steals from everybody that's already in your kingdom, that's already up under your hand? He's coming to steal the evil that you have basically caused into the world, and he's came to replace evil with abundant life. And the whole thing about it is you're mad at him because he's coming down here preaching the gospel and talking about himself in third person or in first person that is threatening your evil empire and your agenda. And so now when you look at the fact that they did all these piercings and all this nailing in your hand, and they didn't already had you walking around the street naked, and they already got burning flesh sitting in a little vat sitting over here to the right, where they taking bodies that's coming off the cross, and it's burning flesh sitting there at the foot of Jesus, and now he has to still concentrate. Even with all this that they've already done, he still has to concentrate enough to still say, Father, forgive them. Now, when we talk about reaching a state of maturity, you have 5 different places in which you're being pierced in. You got blood running down your face, and you still have the gumption. You still have the audacity to speak from a place of healing, to speak the word of God on the behalf, to fulfill prophecy on behalf of people who ultimately will not even want to know you or love you anyway. And you still do it.
Sir, in a broken place, you forgive the people that hurt you. And so we're still trying to process healing, and we're trying to get to the place of healing so I can forgive you. But the ultimate sacrifice, or the ultimate way to forgive, is to forgive you in the place where I'm still broken, I'm still hurt, I'm still disappointed, I'm still mad, I'm still frustrated, because I can't believe you did it, but I still forgive you. I won't even think twice about it.
And I got to heal you while you're still throwing salt on my wound. Like, you see that I'm trying to heal. You don't care. And you are still, you steady throwing salt on them. They're fresh wounds. And you're not, I got to be compassionate enough to still deal with you, to pray with you, to love you, to look you in your face on a Sunday morning and act like I don't know that you ate your breakfast, lunch, and dinner while you throwing salt and shade in our modern vernacular.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't,
but that's when the healing is more important than the wound.
Yeah.
The focus on the healing. When you get to that place, my healing is more important than my wound. I can look at the wound and I can talk about all these things, but when I have a place to be in God, I don't have time to be mad at you. I don't have time to look, because God is working it for my good. I don't have time to point out anything that you're doing to me, because I got a cross I got to get on, because there's a tomb that I need to be resurrected from. And so when I'm going through that situation, my healing has to be more important. And I took the power away from the people that hurt me and put it in a place where it needed to be, because I didn't get closure on some things. Do you understand? Like, I don't understand some things. It didn't make sense. God, you didn't give me an answer, and the people couldn't tell me why they did it. But let me like, so if so busy we're in the place where we're caught up in things and we're not functioning in the things of God, because we're so busy with the wounds as well. So yeah.
What I love about Jesus is this, because I know our time is coming to a close. We're going to have to continue this conversation. Lord, have mercy. But what I love about Jesus is this. I love the fact that Jesus, even in a broken, hurt place, Jesus in a place where all that was going on, he never preached a word against haters. He never focused on people who were after him. He never focused on what was going on at the moment, because he was on a mission. He had a purpose to fulfill. He had an assignment to do. And he didn't allow his wounds to be bigger than his assignment. He was more concerned about the assignment than the wound. And I think
Rewind,
we've got to get to the place in the
rewind the
body.
tape, Doc. Listen, rewind the tape, Doc, because you don't even listen. You just said he was more concerned about his assignments than his wounds. What?
He was more
Woo.
he was more concerned because the assignment was bigger than the wound. And I think so often we fall into places of depression and hurt, and we allow ourselves to fall into these places because we forget the impact that we've got to make in this earth before we leave here. There is so much to be done, and there's so much to do. And the only way to do it is to focus on the assignment. Yes, I'm going to get wounds on the way. Yes, there's going to be some dogs that's going to bite me. Yes, there's going to be some disappointment. There will be some hurt. There will be some scandal. There will be all types of stuff that's going to happen. Why? Because there's always people looking for a way to get to you. But thanks be unto God, which gives us the victory, even
Come
in the
on.
moment where we don't feel victorious. Thanks be unto God. When all this stuff is going on, I'm able to still walk with my head up and say, yes, Lord, because I understand that the wound that I have is going to drive somebody to Christ.
So
God,
that
keep
means
hurting me so that I
healing,
could drive people to closer to you.
that means
Go
that
ahead.
healing is continual. Like that means that the healing process, it continues. So for each type of those wounds, like we don't just heal once, we continue to heal. And so that way we deal with whatever comes from a place of wholeness. So that's how we find peace. That's where we get to a place where there's nothing broken and there's nothing lacking, because now we're able to deal with it knowing like, okay, well, my purpose is greater. And so I can heal from this place knowing that I got to keep going. Like it just means that healing is continual. That's what I keep hearing. Like it's a continuous thing. And so we may have to heal again, and we may have to heal again. And this healing doesn't look like that healing because it's a laceration this time, and it's not a paper cut. So
Yeah.
we don't have to go through anything because we've made it to this certain place in God. No, all of us we all go through things where we have to, even in wherever you feel like you made it to. Number one, no one's arrived. Number two, there's still healing that has to take place in those places. And that's where we can't hide. We can't hide because there are people who even now are looking at us that are hurting, and they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know
Yeah.
they don't even know how to do the work because no one's giving them the how.
Yeah.
So what do you say to those people, Trinity?
Listen, I'm going to let Dominique take that.
Don't throw me in the hot seat, Doc.
What do you say to those people?
Okay, so I'll tell you this, and this is what I was just downloading while we were just talking, is that Satan uses the method of distraction, right, in order for him to discover whatever your damage is that he can use against you, to weaponize against you, to get you to have your downfall. Okay, now I'll say it again. Satan uses distraction, right, to discover the damage that he's going to use for your downfall. Okay, now Jesus or God adversely, and the reason, and we're dealing with discovery because you can't make a proper diagnosis without proper methods of discovery, right? So when you go to the doctor, the way that they know based on the symptoms you have, they know, okay, during this discovery conversation or this, they're running tests so they can have discovery to then come back and tell you, this is based on what we found in research, right? This is what you need to, this is how we need to treat you. This is what you need to take, whatever. So that same process works in the realm of the spirit. So God adversely uses your destiny, right, for the sense of discovery, to see if you're willing to do what he told you to do so you can get to where he wants you to be. So when you look at Moses with the burning bush, right, he uses his destiny to have a conversation with him to bring him out of a desolate place. You were never supposed to be in Jethro's house in the first place. You weren't supposed to stay there. You weren't supposed to be tending to no sheep for no 40 years. I didn't put you in Pharaoh's house for you to leave there because you killed a man before his time because you was called to be a deliverer. But you decided to do it in your own way and in your own means and through your own methods. And now you have to go all the way to Jethro's house, to a desolate place, so that you can now be discovered in the middle of the desert, right? So you can have a conversation with the divine God about your destiny, so that you can become who you're supposed to be, who you were supposed to be before the foundations of the world. Who are you supposed to be? You're supposed to be a deliverer, right? And so now the difficulty of being a deliverer is how am I called to deliver a nation when the message you're calling me to, I need deliverance in myself. The gripe he has with God at the burning bush is you're calling me to use my mouth and I have a stuttering problem. I need deliverance in this area, and you're calling me to use this area I still need deliverance in to deliver a nation, so that I can be known as a deliverer of your people by following your precepts, by following your examples. But I can't even talk. How am I a deliverer of people and I can't even talk? I can't even articulate well. And you're calling me to use the instrument that I need deliverance in to bring deliverance to a people. And so we have three different levels that we have issues with, which is we have an issue with whatever God is telling us, we have an issue with whatever we're telling ourselves, and we have an issue with what Satan is explaining to us. And the reality is most of the time we are siding with the enemy because he sounds the closest to our reality, right? And so for these people, because what he's going to say is so much closer, it's going to feel like, oh, I'm getting this confirmation. Somebody texted me and said the same thing. Somebody in my family said the same thing. They thought my hair was falling out in the back, and so now my hair must be falling out. Let me go up to this. Let me go up to this hospital so I can get a treatment for my hair. Or no. You have to be willing to stretch in order for you to discover whatever God is trying to tell you. And we go right back to the cross. Jesus is on the cross and he is fully extended in every way. There is no, when you're called to deliver, when you're called to save, you have to be fully stretched. And one of the issues that we have in churches, we don't want to be stretched beyond our capacity, because being stretched beyond your capacity feels like it's damaging you. Right? I don't know why I'm sticking with the D's right now, but we're gonna stay there. So it's damaging you. It has the appearance of damaging you when it's actually calling to strengthen you, right? And when you stretch properly, right, you're less likely to get injured because you stretch properly. So if you stretch before you go into whatever you're supposed to be in, if he stretches your faith before the calamity comes, if he's dealing with Moses trying to stretch his faith and getting him to understand that his lack of being able to communicate effectively was all a part of God's plan anyway. He's stretching him in private so that he'll have the liberty to do what he needs to do in public. And he like, I can't do it. You got to get somebody else on the job. I can't do this by myself. I'm not worthy enough. I don't have. And he like, you are. The only reason I'm asking you is because I already knew you could do it. Okay, and then let me say this. Okay, this is my last thing. I'm gonna shut up. I promise. Because so now Aaron has to become a mouthpiece because of your insecurity. And are we building ministry and building the pieces around us in ministry based on our own personal insecurities? Aaron now has to get credit for what Moses would have gotten credit for on his own if he would have believed God for himself. If you would have discovered in the moment when you was talking to the divine one that you had the capabilities to handle the ministry he called you to on your own, you wouldn't need an entourage. You wouldn't even need 10 other people on your flyer. You could be on your flyer by yourself.
First of all, you don't have to talk about me like that. You could
have
I'm
not talking about you. What I'm talking about is, I know. Yeah. But what I'm saying is we're a lot of us are doing ministry with the multitude and the masses and trying to amass all of these other people because if we keep it, let's just keep it 1,000. We do these things because we know that it's going to do one of three things. It's going to bring the crowd, or it's going to bring you the offering that you're looking for, right? Or it's going to, come on, let's if we're going to talk, let's talk. Because I've been in ministry for 17, 18, 19, 20 years.
Sir, I'm with you.
I know all of the up and the down, the side and the wall and the ministry.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So, or it is we're willing to do the ministry for what God is telling us to do.
Let's go back to Moses real fast. Hold on. Let's go back to Moses, because you said something that sparked me. You said Moses was focused on his stuttering problem. And he was so concerned about that. And he was really harping on, I can't do it because of this reason right here and that. And so when you said that, it kind of sparked something in me, because I'm like, how often do we do that from our perspective of the whole I can't, or we find reasons to, and we start all this reasoning process of what we can't do. But there was something more there that I wanted to say that I just can't remember, because you dumped on us so much just now.
Hey, you tagged me in. I was sitting over here chilling in my corner, by the door. It was hot, praise God. But it wasn't not my fault. You did it. It's your fault. Blame you.
Listen, we said that this was going to be an hour. I really want to keep going. I mean, I really want to keep going with this with this whole conversation, because I think it's amazing. I think we have to get to the point where we get to the place of allowing ourselves. That's what I want to say. When you were talking about Moses and you were dealing in that area, and you were talking about him being a deliverer and him having to deliver the people, but he needed deliverance. I think that the problem with us is the church is painted, and I'm gonna say the church because I'm church. I'm all of the encompasses of I'm church God in Christ, been that. But I consider myself a child of God, so I'm a part of the kingdom. So church across the board has taught us and trained us that we have to be a certain area of perfection in order to do certain things. And we've trained people to lie. We've trained people to deceive. We've trained people to be manipulative. We've trained people to be that way. Why? Because we've told everybody, you got to be this and you got to be that in order to reach here. If you're not this, then you can't do this. And so we've made people lie about being perfect, and then we get mad when they show their immaturity. We get mad when they fall. We get mad when they fail. We get mad when they're not able to step up and do the things that are necessary. But we've trained them to be all that they are. We've trained them to be this because they're telling us, I can't do it. But we're saying, you got to be here. You got to be here. So then they lie and get there and they say, you know what, let me just get here so I can get to where I want to go. And so we get there. And so now we've trained ourselves to Hikamosaya and to Ibabaha and to Onamasi. And we've trained ourselves on that. But our prayer life sucks. We don't fast. We can't live right a nickel's worth of nothing. We have no integrity. We don't do the things that are, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say this, just interject, and I'm going to shut up. So we've put them in rooms that their characters can't keep them in.
Exactly.
That's all you're saying.
That's all I'm saying. We put them in this place, and we've made people do certain things, and we've told them that they have to be this thing. And so now we have a broken people. Now we have a hurt people who are bleeding, who are leading and bleeding. And they've been leaders for years, but they're bleeding on their leadership. And their leadership is bleeding on their leadership. And so now we're raising up bleeding leaders because we never allowed our wound to heal. And so now, because we were never put in our place, and now we're not putting our children in their place, and now we're not putting the people that connect to us in their place, we have friends, and all we connect with is bleeding friends. If my friend ain't bleeding, I don't want them.
And go ahead, we were also taught that like we weren't necessarily taught to do the work. We were taught that the altar heals all wounds. Like we're supposed to get up from the altar and everything is going to be okay.
Be perfect. Listen.
The work goes beyond the altar. So sometimes, and I'm grateful for your platform because you don't just talk about the altar. You talk about sometimes you need therapy for this stuff. Sometimes you got to sit down and pray and see a therapist too. Like we don't deal with the holistic, we don't deal with the whole man. We deal with the spirit. So now we feel like, okay, I've been at the altar, and now you beat yourself up because you got up from the altar and you still have these things, or you're still not fully, it doesn't look like what they say it's supposed to look like. But if they're honest, theirs don't look like what they're saying it look like either. They're presenting an image. They're presenting an image. Yeah. And
the thing is, trash stinks. You let it sit for so long, it's going to start stinking. And so what happens is you can only mask a wound for so long before you start seeing blood splatter?
Pete, I'm gonna tell you this and I'm gonna be quiet. So it says basically keeping it uncovered too long will dry it out. So we got so many people out here with wounds and they're uncovered and they're dried out. They don't have no oil. Proper wound care is to keep it moist. How do we keep a wound moist? We keep it moist with the word. We keep it moist with oil. So now people out here dried out and they oil is gone because they didn't have the proper treatment for their wound. They didn't have a good nurse. That's all I'm gonna say. And
they didn't have a nurse that specialized in wounds.
In wound care. There you go.
Some of this will be prevented though if those of us that had wounds would talk about them and not hide them. So we have a culture of church that may be bishops, that may be all these different places, but you won't tell me about your wounds and how you got there. All I see is your maybe healed state, because some of them are not, but some of them are healed state. And so I see that state that you have. And I don't realize that, just like Peter, you deny Jesus. I realize that I do have issues. God is putting me to our place. He's putting me in position, but because of the fact that I can't see anybody already functioning in that, and all you're telling me is you got to come to church. This is what you got to do. If we could be real about it, if you had told me that your sexual encounters and you messed around in your mind with someone before you got to the place of actually committing the affair, maybe it would have kept me from being in that position. Maybe if you had told me you struggled with homosexuality, or the fact that you had indecent thoughts, or you had situations, maybe it would have stopped me from even being in that position, because I would have known that you just didn't have it all together. And the Bible says, in my weakness, his strength is made perfect. But we have a whole bunch of people trying to be so strong, and God can't even get the glory out of it because we're so busy trying to hide all these things that we've been through. And so for one, this year, I've came out about that. One of the reasons why you'll see a whole bunch on my Facebook talking about different things, about things that I went through. And I'm not going for the saved crowd. That's not what I'm going for. I'm not going for the ratata hata. I'm not going for that. I'm going for the people that need to know that just like God picked me up in my state and cleaned me up and is using me, that he can do it for them. He can put them in position and be able to use them where they need to be. And so I won't hide my wounds. I won't hide my holes. I won't hide any of that, because that made me who I am. So you might try to discredit me for who I am. Well, I remember when I first became the reset coach, everyone was like, well, you're not reset. But you know what? The thing is this, God gives you more in the going than he does where you are. And
come on.
I had to remind myself who God was in my life. Yeah, you're looking at the fact that I just lost my husband. You're looking at the fact that my kids are going crazy. You're looking at the fact that, no, I shouldn't be traveling and going and God opened up the world to me, dealing with fibromyalgia and dealing with all those things. But what you did not know was that my wound didn't have anything to do with my destiny. It wasn't about that. It was not about that. It was to make me relatable. It was to make me relatable. So that when I went to Antigua on a walker, people can say that if she came here on a walker, what do I have? And I have I have full use of my hands, full use of my legs, and I'm not doing the will of God. So often we use, and the reason why I say that is because I would be in so much pain preaching and standing up and doing those things until I realized that I could sit down and preach. It didn't take away from my anointing. It was a condition that was in my body. It was a condition that was in my body, but I had to allow that condition to run its course. It wasn't going to just go from somebody laying hands. We went to Aftershock. I don't remember a couple years ago. You guys prayed for me, and it lifted. But the Lord told me, He said, "This is still a process. This is still a process." Because what happened was I was perfectly fine and walking and doing exercise. You remember? I would text you and say, "I don't have a pain in my body." But when the pain came back, discouragement came, because one day I was walking, the next day I was on a walker. The next day I was to a place where I couldn't move. And so what I wanted to share with that is that the Lord told me this. He said, "I'm making you relatable. When it stops serving you, it has got to go." when it stops serving you, it has to go. So it was like I was so busy trying to rebuke the condition that I didn't realize that the condition put me in a place to where I will no longer be so busy to where I cannot acknowledge my family. The condition put me into a place to where I could sit down and get in a word, because there was a place that man could not occupy anymore. Because when I got to that pain, it didn't matter about the medicine. It didn't matter about anything else, because there was a pain that was so deep that it could only be occupied by God. It can only be healed by God. It can only be touched by God. And so what we have to do is we have to be careful in telling our testimonies, because we're telling a testimony. We're just not telling the process.
Listen, 2 Corinthians 12:8. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. We're trying to appear to be perfect. It's not your perfection that's going to draw souls to Christ. It is in your weakness, Trinisha, that they're going to see him. They don't see him because we've made ourselves up. We've glamored ourselves down. We put on rubies and rhinestones. We have flashy suits and wonderful clothes. We sit in beautiful buildings. We sit among people and we talk elaborate. We're no longer the man of God. Now we're the man of God. And we're all of these wonderful things. Everybody want to be bishops. Nobody just want to serve the Lord. And so it's no knock against leadership. So let me put that out there. It's no knock against pastors. This is across the board. This is across the board for all of us that are in leadership. We cannot get to a place where we allow ourselves to become so deep and so wonderful that we forget we have wounds too. We're still healing. We're still in the process of healing. And so while we're trying to hurt people, while we're trying to destroy people, and while we're trying to do all these other things, remember where the Lord brought you from. And you have not yet arrived. You're still on your cross. Your side hasn't even been pierced yet. You barely just made it to the Garden of Gethsemane. You're still sitting here talking about, Father, I will that this cup would pass. You ain't even made it to the cross. And you looking at other people funny. So we've got to get to the place where we display, where we allow people to know that it is human. It is human. It is human. I'm a work in progress. I'm not a work, because I'm not saying I'm a work in progress so I can get away with sin either. I'm saying I'm a work in progress because I'm striving to perfection every day. I want to be more like Christ. I don't want to give myself the cloth of I'm not perfect. No, I'm striving every day. Because I think we got to the place where we use I'm not perfect as an opportunity to cuss and tell people off. We use that as an opportunity to display our weaknesses. No, baby, I'm not perfect means I'm on the way to. But in order for me to get there, I want you to know that just in case you see me blunder, I am perfect. But I'm asking God every day to make me more like him. And through the process of pain, hurt, through the process of wounds, I'm being made like him every day. And so the only way people will ever know that he's real is to see, like Dominique say, the scars in my hands, to see the holes in my feet, to prove to you that I've walked with him, to show you that I fellowship with him, because it is in fellowshipping with him in suffering that I'll be able to reign with him. But the problem is we don't want to fellowship in suffering. We want to reign. I'm done. I'm going to let you all have the last words. I'm going to start with Trinisha, and then Erica, and then Dominique, and we're going to end this broadcast. Let me say thank you all. I really appreciate you for this opportunity. We're going to do this again because y'all are amazing.
Thank you for this opportunity. But if I could speak to somebody today, I just would like to say this. It's just that it was more in my pain and in my suffering that I found out who God really was. So going through, so that's why I can say it was good that I was afflicted, because I wouldn't take it back. On this other side of dealing with fibromyalgia, on the other side of dealing with all of these things, I wouldn't take it back because I learned who God was in a real state. I learned I learned a miracle that he was possible of creating. And the miracle was me, that it was in the process of going through the situation that it helped me. And so today you might be overwhelmed. You're going through things. It seems like life all around you is falling apart. But understand that as it's falling apart, God is putting it back together again. It looks like, if you look at a room, when you're first cleaning out a room and you're putting stuff all over the place, people can walk in the middle of your unclean room while you're having that, and it don't make no sense. But if you just keep folding the shirts and putting them in the drawers, if you keep folding the socks and putting them in the drawers, you keep putting the shoes where they need to be, eventually your room will make sense. And so I just want to encourage you today, don't quit before your room makes sense. Don't allow what you're going through, the confusion, that chaos, because everything that you're putting in place one by one, God is placing it where it needs to be. And eventually everyone that walks in your room will see that now what it was created to be. And so just don't quit today.
So thank you, Trinity, for having me. You're a bully. Can we just tell the people how you gave us an hour to get ready? So in this season, we got to be ready. But I appreciate what you're doing with Aftershock, the movement. But I just basically, a lot of times I think that just like when a baby starts to walk, he stumbles and he falls, and he may get bruised. His knee may be bruised from him trying to walk or trying a thing. And so today I want to speak to people who have tried and they stumbled and they fell. So and then they've allowed fear to keep them from trying again. So try again, whether it's a business, whether it's an endeavor, whatever that is. Don't even allow the bruises that you got in the last season to keep you stifled to where you don't want to try, because fear becomes the opposite. It becomes a blockade for you reaching your full destiny and your potential.
Dominique, after you finish your words, I want you to pray for the people today, if you would, for me. Also at 1:30, for those of you who are on, if you have nothing to do, tune into 100 Days with God. We have a wonderful message every day from someone different, a different pastor or leader from over the world, ministers on there. So log on to 100 Days with God at 1:30 p.m. Thank you so much.
Yeah. But I'm going to finish this conversation with this. Olives, in order for them to be used on wounds, first of all, have to go through a process of waiting. Okay, they have to go through a process of waiting, and then the process of them being taken off of where they are situated. Then they are placed into this pool, if you will, and they have to handle the weight of the foot crushing them in order for them to be turned into the liquid form. Right. So you have to go from weight. Then you have to be able to handle the weight of being crushed, and then you have to go through a process of being of packaged, or you have to go through a process of being postured in order for you to be able to be put in a place to where you can now be received and applied for the wounds that you're called to. And so, what I don't want us to do is mistake our process, right, as punishment. The process that you're going through is not punishment, but in reality, it's for you to fulfill your purpose, right? And so, and with that being said, we are all called to meet the needs of the people, no matter what wounds you have, no matter where you are, no matter how much money you got, no matter what your family dynamic is, no matter what happened to you when you were a child, no matter what happened to you when you were in church, no matter what happened to you when you were on your job, no matter what happened to you in that last relationship. The reality is all of us are called to help and to maintain and to manage the wounds of others. And so my prayer today is Father God. First of all, we want to say thank you for putting us in this room. Thank you for putting us in this space. Thank you for putting us in this place. We have set aside this time to discuss how to properly manage, to maintain, to maneuver, and not to manipulate ourselves out of the truth and be in denial of the wounds which we have. We thank you for you armoring us with your word, and for you giving us the strategy and the tenors and the tones and the processes and the things that are necessary for us to understand how you handled wounds, how you handled the pain and the agony, the strife and the jealousy, the envy of those in which you were called to save. They still wanted to hurt you. So God, I pray that today we will recognize that once you are healed, that your objective is not to hurt. I pray that the fact that we are healed in our mind, in our hearts, in our wills, in our desires, in our physical man, in our spirit man, in our soul man. God, I pray that you would just cause us to come into not just a state of healing, but a state of wholeness. I pray that we would not just pray prayers of getting us back to the state in which we were once before, but I pray that you will bring us into a place and into a space in which we have never seen. Your word says it like this. It says, eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, neither has it entered into the hearts of men the things that the Lord shall do. So God, we thank you right now that you would allow us to be in a place to where we would come up out of these circumstances, that we would come up out of these situations, that we will come up out of the agony in which we're experiencing. And God, that you will put us in a place and in a space where we will come up in our resurrected state. God, that there will be people who once knew us before, but when you get through with us, that you would allow us to be in a state of we're not even recognizable anymore. The things that the triggers and the points that the enemy will try to use to distract us, to deter us, to discover the damages necessary for our downfall. God, I pray that you would allow our destiny to bring us into a place of fulfillment, of purpose, of power and authority in that of the earth. And God, I thank you for all of us who are assembled. I pray that you would replenish the mind, the heart, the will, and the understanding, the ideas, even the technological abilities of that of Trinity. God, we thank you right now for him allowing us access to this platform. And I pray that you will cause divine acceleration to meet aftershock the movement. So God, we give you all the glory, honor, and praise. We thank you for this opportunity to spread the word, that we might spread your word, that it might make an impact to heal the wounds, to make us whole, and to get us into a place of soundness in our minds, our hearts, and our wills for the sake of your glory. In Jesus' name I pray, and the people of God say amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all so much. Have a good day.
Yes, sir.